Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder why completely separated ancient cultures all around the world share these remarkably similar legends about intelligent water deities? It's kind of a mind-bending question. Well, today we're unpacking a fascinating source text that claims these global myths don't just share some common psychological archetype. No, the author suggests they actually share a single extraterrestrial origin. It's an incredible premise that bridges ancient Mesopotamia, Japanese folklore, and the deep cosmos. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so let's start by contrasting two seemingly completely unrelated ancient legends. On one side of the world, we have the Japanese kappa. If you're into folklore, you probably know them as those legendary amphibious water sprites that hang out in rivers and streams. And then, way over on the other side, we have the ancient Mesopotamian Ones, a literal fishman deity who supposedly rose from the sea to teach civilization to early humans. Geographically and culturally, these two myths are, well, worlds apart. But, according to the author's readings in our source text, both of these amphibious myths aren't just fairy tales. They actually stem from the exact same extraterrestrial visitors who arrived on Earth millennia ago.
So, the unifying answer to this massive global mystery lies with the being you're looking at right now. The text introduces them as the Pisces Reptilian. According to the author's spiritual readings, this specific extraterrestrial species traveled to Earth all the way from the constellation Pisces. This is the literal physical origin of our global mythological mystery. The text makes a really compelling argument. Whenever ancient humans encountered these beings emerging from the water, they obviously lacked the vocabulary for advanced space travel, right? So they just recorded them in the only way they could, as fish gods or water demons. Now, here is where we absolutely need to throw out our Hollywood stereotypes. Unlike those hyper-violent, predatory reptilian tropes we constantly see in modern sci-fi, this specific faction is remarkably different. They have a surprisingly mild-mannered personality, and rather than hunting humans, they're actually pescatarians. Their main food source is just fish. They even have this highly developed aesthetic sensibility, really favoring beautiful scenic landscapes. But, don't let the mild manners fool you. They still love a good power struggle. The text actually notes that they specifically enjoy physical contests that look a whole lot like modern sumo wrestling. They frequently use tactics to literally drag their opponents into the water. So, we're basically talking about art-loving, pescatarian, sumo wrestling aliens, which is just amazing.
To really understand how they sparked this global mythology, we kind of have to look at their origins. The Pisces Reptilians are an amphibious race. They originally built these vast, highly advanced underwater cities on their home planet, which makes sense, was a world heavily dominated by water. Because they're amphibious, they can definitely survive on land for periods of time, but they primarily live and operate in aquatic environments. It's this unique biological and technological adaptation to water that allowed them to just seamlessly inhabit Earth's oceans and lakes. And that is exactly what sparked the global fish people mythology we see scattered all across the historical record.
And their biology and their technology is arguably the most fascinating part of this whole reading. You might be wondering, how do they generate the immense physical power required for things like, say, their sumo wrestling? Well, the text explains that they possess advanced technology worn right on their bodies that acts as a localized energy converter. It actually works a lot like how we're currently trying to develop modern hydrogen-powered cars. The device intakes regular everyday water, utilizes an internal mechanism to separate the hydrogen from the oxygen, and then burns that extracted hydrogen as a highly combustible, powerful fuel source. To put that into perspective, this incredible hydrogen energy adaptation gives them roughly 10 times the physical strength of a normal human.
But wait, think about the mechanical vulnerability here. If their power relies entirely on a piece of technology that requires a constant intake of liquid water to generate fuel, what happens to that immense strength if they lose access to the water? Or what if the device itself gets compromised? Keep this fatal flaw in mind, because it perfectly, and I mean perfectly, explains one of the most famous, specific details in all of Japanese folklore.
If you know anything about the Japanese kappa, you know the cardinal rule. A kappa always has a small dish of water on top of its head. The legend goes that if you bow to a kappa, it'll politely bow back, the water spills out, and boom, it instantly loses all of its magical strength. According to the reading, this isn't just some quirky fairy tale. It's actually a misunderstood, primitive, historical record of this exact extraterrestrial technological device breaking down. Ancient people literally witnessed these amphibious aliens losing their mechanical power when their water intake devices were damaged or emptied, and they just passed the story down as the legend of the kappa's dish.
It's like a giant puzzle clicking into place, reinterpreting mythology entirely through a technological lens. So, zooming out to the timeline of ancient history, we can see how this local folklore builds into something epic. The text states that these Pisces reptilians arrived on Earth roughly 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. They emerged from the seas and navigated up the rivers. Eventually, they made their way to ancient Babylon, rising right out of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. There, they were revered as the deity Oannes, and they actually taught early humanity essential skills, things like astronomy, mathematics, and the very foundations of civilization. But, as you might guess, their peaceful intervention didn't last forever. During the era of the Great Flood, they found themselves locked in this massive cosmic clash with rival alien factions over the actual fate of human existence.
The source material describes a fierce ideological struggle with a rival extraterrestrial group known as the Enlil faction. Now, the Enlil faction was highly aggressive. They viewed these mild, amphibious beings as evil beasts purely because of their reptilian appearance. Disgusted by humanity and our Pisces benefactors, the Enlil faction famously decided to trigger a great flood to wipe out human civilization entirely. As quoted in the text, they actually mocked the Pisces reptilians' aquatic nature, declaring, "If you like the sea so much, live in it. We will cause a flood."
But when the Enlil faction initiated this cataclysmic flood, our mild Pisces reptilians did not just stand by. Operating under the name of the Sumerian deity Enki, these amphibious beings acted as messengers and protectors. They actively rebelled against the destruction. They reached out to a specific prophet who had maintained faith, warned him of the impending disaster, and provided the exact means to survive. The author asserts that this intervention is the true historical event that we now universally recognize as the story of Noah's Ark.
To bring this whole story back to the present day, the author posits that these beings never truly left our planet. After the flood and the dawn of modern human history, they simply retreated. Today, they are said to maintain highly advanced underwater bases in our deep oceans and lakes. On top of that, they've transitioned to holding a really profound spiritual influence. They allegedly reign over astral realms, like the mythical Dragon Palace or Ryugujo in the Japanese spirit world. Basically, they've shifted from being our physical teachers to our quiet, hidden observers and spiritual guardians.
We've covered a ton of ground in this explainer today, tracing a path all the way from the rivers of ancient Japan and Babylon straight to the constellation of Pisces. It completely reframes how we look at history, doesn't it? Which leaves us with one powerful question. If these specific readings hold truth, how many of our oldest fairy tales are actually misunderstood records of advanced extraterrestrial contact? I highly encourage you to look at the myths of our ancestors not just as bedtime stories, but as potential historical blueprints just waiting to be decoded. Thanks so much for joining me, and definitely keep questioning those invisible bridges between ancient mythology, the deep oceans, and the stars.